All right, keep an eye on it for me. All right, also everyone, Grayson, wave your hand. This class is for Grayson. I had to embarrass him too. No, I like to lean all of my training stuff on the sales side of the business, like getting business, closing business, building skills, stuff like that. But for CEs, you need a lot of the compliance stuff, the fair housing, the broker relationship, the contracts and forms. So those are the things that I'm good at. I don't like teaching as much. And so I try not to as much as I can. But my whole goal with these CEs and lunch and learns is if every agent comes to every one of them, then you'll have more than 30 hours by the time your 3 years comes up. And you never have to buy any, and you get it all top-notch stuff. So today we're going to be talking about disclosures of brokerage duties, the Broker Relationship Act. Christina had, do you have it? Is it making its way? There is a sign-in sheet making its way around. Be sure you grab it by the end. It'll be over here on the kitchen before it's done. But this is, one of your major topics, so I want to make sure everyone gets credit for it. But no, Grayson has a deal going right now where he is not representing the other side, and so we're having a lot of discussions on what are my duties to this person, and it all ties into this, brokerage disclosures and brokerage duties. And so you have duties to people, you have duties to all parties of the transaction, and you have duties to just people that you're representing. And so we go through different pieces and what your actual duties are. So I was just making fun of Grayson because it was the most recent case that we've done. So I realized I got the wrong thing on too. Hold on. Everyone kind of see that? I'm going to steal your desk too. All right, you good? We all good? All right. Audrey, you good? All right. This is the broker disclosure of brokerage duties form. Everyone's seen it. It's attached to almost every document we sign, but most people have probably never actually read it. It's a lot. It's a very dense document, but these are your duties to parties and non-party, or parties basically parties of the contract, whether you represent them or not. So we're going to go through item by item, line by line, talk about them. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory, but we're going to have little discussions on each one. Most of this document is normally attached as the last page of any other document. So it's the 4th page of the buyer-broker agreement. It's the 5th page of the listing agreement. It's normally the 8th page of the contract. It's attached to any agreement. It should be typically in our dot loop and in an OREC document. So it's normally the last page of any agreement that you're going to be having. So it's required on any contract. So like I said, it's normally the last page. So OREC considers any agreement that a broker has with a consumer, with a party of the contract. So this needs to be attached if you are doing a BBA. It needs to be attached if you are doing a listing agreement. It needs to be attached if you're doing a purchase contract. So it's not just a contract. You don't need it when you do a contract. OREC considers a contract any agreement between you and the party. Does that make sense? So when you're doing BBAs, this has to be attached to the buyer-broker agreement. And it has to be done prior or at the time of signing of that document. So you can't just do this with the contract. So that's why there's a seller, disclosure of seller's brokerage duties and disclosure of buyer brokerage duties. They're attached to whatever document. So the seller duties are attached to the listing agreement. Buyer duties are attached to the buyer broker agreement. If you use our automated BBA, this is included in that. If you use your own, you need to make sure it's included with it. It's a separate document in dot loop, but it needs to go out anytime they sign any kind of agreement. So you'll just click what.
But when we do it through the portal, like when we don't actually send it from dot loop, that does not send with it.
It should come as the final page of it. They should sign it. If it's not,
Somebody go back and sign one.
okay, if it's not, let me know. It should be automated with it though, I believe. That was the original intention, so if it's not, let me know. So again, you'll check what you're doing. If you're writing a contract, if you're reviewing and sending a contract with your listing agreement, or if you're just doing the listing agreement, or if you're doing a buyer-broker agreement, or if you're writing an offer, it needs to be attached with all those things. So even if you do one with the buyer-broker agreement, you need to do another one with the contract. Okay, so very top of the page, duties and responsibilities. A broker who provides brokerage services to one or both parties shall describe and disclose in writing the broker's duties and responsibilities prior to the party or parties signing a contract to sell, purchase, option, or exchange real estate. So very important to understand prior to. There are certain documents that are like what we call trailing documents, and that's stuff that Christina or your TC can go get after the contract. You know, maybe our inspection waiver or stuff like that. This is not a trailing document. This is a document that needs to be done prior to the contract being signed. Understand the difference there. Happens a lot, but this should be done prior to the contract being signed. Disclose your duties to, it discloses your duties to all parties. So if there is another side of the contract that is unrepresented, then you still have to get this document signed to disclose your duties. So the exact situation that Grayson is in is he is buying a home from a seller. So he's licensed, so he has certain duties to members of the public. So he still has to get this signed by the seller even though he's the buyer. And so that's the situation we're going through. So you have duties to the parties of the contract. A party of the contract is someone, name is in the contract, right? A party is not the buyer's dad or the buyer's attorney or the buyer's sister or whatever. It is the party of the contract. So your duties don't extend past them, they just extend to the parties. So since the seller of his purchase contract is a party in the contract, he has these duties to them. Does that make sense? A party is someone who's on the contract. And you don't have duties to non-parties, meaning people who aren't. Maybe they're associated with the transaction, but they're not a party to the contract. Okay.
Prior to, can that be at the same time?
At the same time, yeah. So you're presenting it before the signature, with the contract before signature, yeah. At the same time as, yeah. Okay, Section 1, Item A. Your first duty, treat all parties to the transaction. Again, a party is someone on the contract. To the transaction with honesty and exercise reasonable skill and care. So, reasonable skill and care covers a wide spectrum. It's a very broad legal term. So, no lying, obviously, that should be pretty obvious, honesty. No omitting information, and no allowing others to misunderstand. Does that make sense? You know what I mean when I say, I'm not going to correct you. I'm allowing you to misunderstand what's going on here. Even though I think, and I say this all the time, and I'll come to you, Tim. I say this all the time, when you're calling FSBOs or prospecting or anything, if you think they're not 100% sure, stop them and correct them, because all you're doing is creating roadblocks for yourself in the future, 100% of the time. So omitting information or allowing others to misunderstand is violating the honesty clause here.
With that, is there a certain point where maybe there's a language barrier or something where you need to say, maybe I need to get advice from someone else, just to protect us, if we're representing someone who maybe not on the same page, like the client I was telling you about the other day, is there a certain point where we need to bring in an interpreter or something to kind of protect us, that we did our best judgment to make sure they understood what they were signing?
Yeah, I mean, that's a, the question was for online and everyone is, if there's a language barrier, when do you bring someone in to make sure everything is understood correctly? That's such a judgment call. I mean, there's no standard for that. So if you feel like they might be misunderstanding anything, stop and try to make sure they understand. So to the extent of that is a judgment call. Do I need to call an interpreter? Do I need to, whatever it might be. So, but yes, make sure they understand. Okay, so honesty, no omitting, no lying, no allowing, half truth is a whole lie. Who's told their kids that before? The next piece, exercise reasonable skill and care. This is where I say do less. You are not an inspector. You are not a whatever else, a contractor, any of these things. Your job is to potentially identify something and then be a resource for that consumer, not the end-all be-all or the know-it-all or the expert. When it says exercise reasonable skill and care, a lot of agents take it the wrong way and they try to go identify problems. That is not your job. Your job is to refer those that expertise to inspectors, to foundation companies, to roofers, to plumbers, to electricians, whatever it might be. Your job's not to go around the house identifying a bunch of problems. And I'm a lot of agents, I try to do the exact opposite. If someone walks into a house and asks me how old the hot water tank is, that is irrelevant at this time. You don't even know if you like the house. And so I stop clients immediately. How old is the roof? None of that junk matters when I'm walking through a house. You tell me if you like it, and then I'll go do homework on the house. And that's how the walkthrough, it should be just about, do I like this home? Do I like the location, the features, blah, blah, blah. Then I'll go do homework on the house. Because if I told you the roof's old, you're gonna walk out right now, we're gonna not go see the rest of it. No, we're gonna go still see the rest of the house, see if we like it. So exercise reasonable skill and care is become the resource, not the expert on everything, right? Become the resource. Does that make sense? I think a lot of agents might get themselves in trouble or step on their own feet and kill deals unnecessarily when they start talking too much sometimes. Be a resource, not the expert. Okay, section B, unless specifically waived in writing by a party of the transaction, you must receive all written offers and counteroffers, reduce offers or counteroffers to written form upon request of any party to the transaction, and present timely all written offers and counteroffers. So if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. Anytime someone says, hey, I'm thinking about writing an offer, what do you think of this? Always say put it in writing for a couple of reasons. One, because it's your duty. Two, because it's going to help in the negotiation. If someone just gives me a crappy verbal offer, it's super easy to say no. You get a crappy offer in writing, they're a little more serious. We can take it more serious, we can move forward with it, we can make counteroffers, and we can get something done. I think it shows low commitment if it's verbally. If it's written, it shows a little bit more commitment in my eyes, and that's how I phrase it to the sellers or the buyers. They took the time to review the house, look at the house, come see the house, write the offer, sign it, send it. Let's take it seriously. Versus, hey, would you guys take X? There's less commitment. You cannot be the gatekeeper. You must facilitate the transaction. A lot of agents will say, I can't present that, or I'm not going to present that, or we've already gotten something higher than that, so I'm not going to present that one. That is not your job. Your job is to present everything that is given to them. Your job is to frame these offers as best you can to get them received by the client, but you are not the gatekeeper. Put everything in writing. If it's not in writing, it didn't happen. Don't refuse to write offers just because it's too low. Another piece of this is look at present timely. How many people have been in a situation where they're slow playing your offer, maybe trying to get another offer, or maybe trying to prompt multiple offer situations? That is a violation of their duties, in my opinion. Now, if they are within their time frames, you could say it's not because they're still complying with the time frame specified within 24 hours or whatever. And maybe they're doing their client a duty by waiting and gathering other offers. But you cannot wait beyond time frames. You cannot push long. These are things. Now, again, if a client isn't responding, that's one thing. But there's no excuse for you to not communicate with the other side. Number one, this is the number one complaint on real estate agents is poor communication. Number one complaint and the problem is, we'll talk about this later in a couple more slides. Most people don't want to deliver bad news. And so they put it off until they hear something or something changes or something. Let's be adults here, guys. I can't control this situation. I can't make my seller do something or my buyer do something. What I can control is my communication with the other side. And I can explain, I'm calling them once an hour. I'm calling them all the time. I got an email out. I promise I'm working on it. But to not respond, not answer, not communicate with the other side of the transaction is unacceptable. Even if your client is unresponsive, you can respond. Pet peeve of mine. So don't slow play offers. I think that's a violation. Again, you can take your time in the time frames in the contract, but beyond that, I think you're violating your duties. Item C, inform in writing the party for whom the broker is providing brokerage services. So this is a duty only to those that I'm providing services. When an offer is made, that the party will be expected to pay certain closing costs, brokerage services, and approximate amount of those costs. So this is your net to seller, your cost to buyer. Again, this is to brokerages you're providing services to. So in a FSBO situation, I actually misspoke and I got corrected on this, Grayson. forever, I thought we had a duty to the other side to actually disclose costs. So if your buyer is buying a FSBO, in the past, I've always given them a net to seller as well. That is not a duty. That's only a duty required to your service. You have to disclose your compensation, but not estimated costs associated. So, so when an offer is made, I don't know how many agents I see chasing documents after closing for their cost to buyer or their net to seller, and it never got presented. It happens a lot. Christina can confirm. Doing it right now, literally chasing it right now. And there's a couple of people who are repeat offenders, but we love them, so we're not going to say anything.
I'll give some advice on the estimated cost and estimated net sheets, and this is just something I've learned from previous brokers, but also make sure that you're putting verbiage on your estimates that it is only an estimate and not to rely on those numbers, because that'll save you some trouble. But also I've kind of moved away from doing CTO, and I just get a loan estimate from my lender and have them initial.
Oh, use that, same thing.
So
So
One actually says it really big.
there you go.
ours,
Yeah.
yeah. So no wrong way to do this. Oakmar has one, OREC has one, CTO has one through the app. We have a custom one. I think all the other ones are confusing as heck, and so I created one that's super easy to read, that I think is super easy to read, but you have to fill it out, and it has some math in it, and it's tough, right? Math stuff. And so, but it says at the beginning, or it says at the very bottom, these are an estimate, these are approximations. Make sure they understand that when you're signing it. Some people, if it's not explained correctly, they think this is what they owe, and then they see someone from the lender, and they think, well, this is not what they said, and these are just estimates. Your lender and your title company give you exact numbers as we get closer to the transaction.
Do you create agency if you provide a net to seller sheet?
No, so we'll talk about this in a minute. Oklahoma's not an agency state. You can't create agency. There's no brokerage relationship without explicit. I don't think there's even any implied brokerage relationship without explicit signature. I don't think. A good attorney could probably argue the other way, but I don't think you're going to accidentally take responsibility. I don't think.
Question actually, on the flip side, you said we don't have to do net to seller if we're not representing the seller.
Correct.
What about if the buyer is unrepresented?
I don't, and here's why.
I don't think so, unless you create a brokerage relationship with them, and then you do. But if you're not, and you're just taking your list side commission, and you're not, then I don't think.
Here's why I
Then no.
don't do it, because it starts to create a precedent that they can get resources and advice and things for you for free
Right.
when you are not providing them brokerage services.
Yeah.
So I try to avoid completely doing anything for the other side if they're unrepresented.
Yeah.
Just because it starts to create an expectation.
And I think you should have that conversation with them. Do you want to go forward with unrepresentation, or would you like me to represent you? Because again, we'll talk more about it. We have a duty to parties. We don't have a duty to the transaction. We don't have a duty to one side. We have a duty to parties of the contract. So everyone involved in the contract. So whether I have brokerage services, there are certain things I don't have to do, like inform them of their costs and timely update them. I'll go a little cheat sheet page at the end, but I still have most of these duties are to all parties, not just my party. So I still have to do stuff, but I don't have to advise you. I have to disclose certain things to you, but I don't have to advise you. So have that conversation. Do you want advice and representation or not? If not, there's no brokerage relationship. There's no cost to buyer. Item D, keep the party for whom the brokerage is providing brokerage services informed regarding the transaction. So again, this is where it's like, I don't have a duty to inform you of what's going on to the transaction if you're unrepresented. That's your job to keep up with it. I have to disclose these things, but I don't have to keep you up to going on. So a big piece of this, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Silence can be a violation of this clause, right? If I have bad news, I'm just not getting back to you, or if I have no news and I'm just not communicating, that can be a violation of this. I have a duty to keep you informed regarding the conversation, or regarding the transaction. So silence can be a violation. You can't decide what to communicate and what not to communicate. That is not your duty. Anything that is offered or discussed must be, I don't know where my mouse is, must be communicated, informed regarding the transaction. You must have hard conversations. Again, we're all adults. It's no one's fault anything is happening, but you have to communicate. If you are emotional about this process, then you are no service to your clients. If you are emotional and cannot have hard conversations, you are of no service to your clients. You can be empathetic, you can care for them, but if you are emotional and cannot have hard conversations, you are doing a disservice to your clients. So you have to have hard conversations. One exception to this that Evelyn brought up was love letters to the sellers. Let's take a poll. If you get a letter from the buyer that says, I'm Brett and I've got 2 kids and a dog and I'm dreaming of this house and my kids are gonna grow up in the backyard and I can't wait and I love it and I'm just gonna die if I don't get it. Who gives that to their seller? Good answer. You should not, there's probably some gray area here. I don't think love letters are part of the contract, and I don't think you have any obligation to present them. It also creates discrimination and fair housing liability if you do that. Because I've seen this happen at another brokerage where someone sent the letter with a picture of their family, they didn't get the multiple offer, they went with someone else, and then they claimed it was because of race. And so whether it's true or not, I don't know. But you create an opportunity for that to exist. They wanted to see how cute their family was. I'm sure it was a cute family. Or maybe it was an ugly family. I don't know. Maybe that's why they didn't get it.
What if you talking about the offer and they figure out if they want it or not, then you send them the letter, be like, hey, they wrote this for you. They've already accepted it without knowing the letter.
I don't know what that I don't know what in.
It feels like you're swaying them in a way. Like,
Well, yeah, well, it's
like you're trying to get them to give them what they want more than,
to make an emotional decision. The idea is to make an emotional decision that's not beneficial to them.
I had a listing, he bought it from a family member, it's been in the family for 800 years or whatever. We talked about the offer, never mentioned the letter. And then after he decided, hey, I do want to go with it, I was like, well, hey, they also wrote you a letter. Here, I thought this would be cool because it's a family house.
Yeah.
But they didn't know about the letter while they were.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just don't know what it would serve, like what would be. I mean, so you can. Yeah. You can there. I think doing it before when the decisions, but even then, if they've accepted it and haven't closed, I think you create an opportunity for someone.
It will make it more ideal if you happen to do it just because it's like, well,
Do it after closing, because if they could see the family and think, oh dang, I freaking know that guy. that guy goes to my gym and he doesn't wipe down his equipment. So I think anything before closing could create opportunity to sway them negatively.
You have a hand back here.
What if it's the other way around?
Say how you mean?
Seller's like, hi, well, has to write a letter like, welcome to my home.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for coming and taking a tour.
Yeah.
Someone asked me that recently.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad marketing tactic to get you to, again, emotionally appeal to the home. Not a bad idea. I don't think you have an obligation to present it. And I don't know what benefit. All it does is create unnecessary. None of that. I can't articulate what I'm trying to say. I don't think it helps at all. And if it does help, it helps the other party, not your party.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So you can do all these things. I think it creates liability and it creates roadblocks in the future. Because I've had sellers ask about the buying family. And do they have kids or not? Because we raised our kids here. You can't ask that. That is illegal to ask. So it just creates opportunity to create liability. So it's best to just keep it on paper. But I've had clients that turn into private investigators as soon as they look at the offer, they look at the name, and they're on Facebook, OSCN. I mean, they're all over. And so they do that. That's public information. You're not in trouble. We'll talk about that in a minute too. It's public information. So good. The one thing that excludes from this, keeping them informed regarding the transaction, I think is a love letter. I don't think you have any obligation. I think it actually creates liability. Item E, timely account for all monies and property received by the broker. This is super easy. If you receive a check or get money, do what you're supposed to do with it right away. Don't put it into your account. Don't put it in your car and forget about it. Don't put it in your wallet. Take it exactly where it needs to go right away. It's not your money. The number one reason people lose their license is because of mishandling of monies, according to OREC. Number one reason. It's also the number one reason brokerages don't have trust accounts. That is a phenomenal liability that is anyone that says deposit your earnest money with their brokerage is probably 100 years old, because that's how they used to do it. But it's just unnecessary.
I have a question on that. I'm kind of glad you brought it up. There's a specific brokerage that all their listings,
Say that.
not all their agents in that brokerage, but certain agents in that brokerage say it's required that the earnest money be held by the brokerage. Is there any
I don't know.
legal room, can they require that? It's the buyer's.
No, it's a term in the contract. So you don't want to put it there, don't buy the house. If you don't want the seller, as soon as you press the seller will be like, I don't care where they put it. And then the listing agent will be like, fine. But it's a terrible idea. Because in the contract, it says what the title company can do if they hold it. If a brokerage holds it, they can give it to whoever they want. It doesn't stipulate. So the brokerage can keep it and give it to whoever. Now, there's probably some legal action you can take against if it's unjust, but you give it to the title company because they're an independent third party, and there's rules around what they can do with it. A brokerage has less rules around it. But it's a term in the contract, just like anything else.
So you would say just if you see that, just write the offer how you want to write it?
I'd write it however you want. Yep. And then explain to the buyer, if we give it to the broker, it's probably fine, but about 10% of contracts bust. So there's a 10% chance that this busts, and if the broker has it, who do you think they're going to give it to? So I would push back on that. And then when the seller's like, I don't care, I just want to sell my house, then it'll probably go to a third party. Maybe not. Maybe they're firm. So, but just like anything else, it's a term in the contract. Put it where you want it.
Okay.
So no trust accounts. Put the money where it's supposed to go. Don't steal money. Does everyone know they're not supposed to steal money? Okay. If you don't, see me after. Davin, get out. Disclosure of brokerage duties, F. Keep confidential. So there's a lot around this one. So keep confidential information received from a prospective party, a buyer. They're not a party to a contract yet because they haven't written a contract. They are a prospective buyer. So you have duties to that. Confidential. The confidential information shall not be disclosed by a broker without consent of the party disclosing the information unless, so these are the 3 reasons you're allowed to share information. 1, consent to the disclosure is granted in writing by the party or prospective disclosing the information. It is required by law, so you can't hold something confidential if it's required by law to share, or the information is made public or becomes public. So if they give you written permission, if it's required by law for you to share, or if it's already public information, like on OSCN or something like that, public information. If there was an article written about something, we had a client put a house under contract, Googled the house address, and found out that there was a double murder in it 2 years prior. Damn. Backed out of it. And so that's something that it's public information, so if you disclose it, you're not violating anything. So if something is confidential, the state defines confidential information for us. So a seller can't just be like, hey, don't tell anyone this, but it has to be part of this. Yeah.
A lot of locals are saying,
Yeah.
The things you're
Yeah.
talking about elaborating on is, I think
You deal with it a lot more. You do in Lawton.
I'm learning so much. It's like
You can't do that?
you can't do that. It's like, but y'all really be out here doing stuff.
Not here though. Yeah,
No,
Christy.
not at all.
What do you advise with listing agents who push to not receive any reports after inspections and the buyer's backing out? Because they
Oh, like I don't want to see it.
disclose this.
Yeah. You can't you can't do anything. Send it to them. They receive it, and it's on them. And then it happens where a seller and a buyer can't agree, and the buyer's like, well, if I can't buy it, no one can buy it, And it's like, I want them to disclose everything, and then they're searching it later and making sure they disclose it and all that stuff. It's best to just try to get them to move on and move forward. But yeah, if you give it to them and they don't disclose stuff, I think you could probably make an argument that you have a duty to go see who puts it under contract next and let them know about it. I don't know.
Would you advise to just send it to them
Yeah, yes.
with the cancellation?
Yeah, I would, yeah. If it's material and, yeah, I would. So again, the following information shall be considered confidential. So the state tells us what information is confidential according to the contract. So 1, that the party or prospective party is willing to pay more or accept less than what is offered, right? This happens a lot while we're negotiating, and we say, hey, I know my guy will come up to 180 if you can just get up to 180. That is a violation of your brokerage duties. Happens a lot. The way I get around that, this is the conversation that I have, is a lot of times, here's what I've learned. Sellers will always come down lower than they say they will. Buyers will always go up higher than they say they will. So if someone says this is my final, this is what I want, this is what I need, they'll do more or do less. So ignore that completely and don't share that information because it's not relevant, because they'll always do more or less. So what I say, if I want to, in a negotiation, price anchoring is powerful. And so you can put a number in someone's head, and then that buyer, that other party has that number as an anchor, and it's going to get them closer versus if you just said, come higher, right? So anchoring can be powerful. So I always like to say, based on conversations I've had with my client, I think they're going to need to be around X. I can't speak for them, but I think they're going to need to be around X. So I've disclosed that I don't know what they're going to do, but based on conversations, this is where I would advise you to be if you want to have the best chance. So if they say, what if I offered 180? It's like saying, higher. Getting warmer, that's different than saying you got to be at 190. So disclosing that they will come lower or come higher is a violation of confidential information. Another piece of confidential information is that a party or prospective party is willing to agree to financing terms that are different from what is offered. So this is going to be like they'll waive the appraisal, or they're okay with no down payment, or they're okay, anything like that, right? You want to try to get that information from them. You don't want to be forthcoming with that information. That is violating confidential information. The other piece is any motivating factors of the party or prospective party purchasing, selling, or exchanging the property. So happens all the time. Why are the sellers moving? Where are the buyers coming from? That information is confidential to them. It gets shared a lot, and if you get permission from the client to explain that, then you can. But this whole thing comes down to leverage. Confidentiality protects leverage. So if I say, I'll come back to you. So if I say my client is building a home and it's going to be ready in September, that gives the buyer leverage. They know they can wait and get a better deal, or they know that they have to be out by this time. It gives them leverage. So confidentiality protects leverage. So that's why we try not to give motivation, right? One of the spouse just passed away and they need to sell. They're going through foreclosure. This creates leverage for the other party. Or the other way around, buyers moving in from out of town, they start work tomorrow. That creates leverage for the seller. Make sense? So it seems harmless, like why are they moving? It creates leverage for other parties. That's what we want to try to create or prevent.
What if their reason for selling is something that affects the sale? So like if it's, I don't know.
Double murder?
Divorce, probate, things like that, things that affect the sale.
If it's public information, OSCN will have divorce filings,
Right.
then I think you can disclose it. If it's not filed yet, you can get permission, or you can't disclose it.
Okay.
Personal reasons.
I'm just thinking of things that affect the sale, like if it's court ordered, that the home has to sell for X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
Until X date.
So if there's conditions affecting sale,
Yes.
would be another, you would disclose those things.
But
I
you
think
don't
they're,
have to disclose why those things exist.
yeah, I would say so, yeah.
Okay.
Unless you get written permission,
Okay.
which is the other thing that you can do, get written permission. So,
Excuse me, by written, it's like you just mean text message or?
yeah, in writing, text, email, yeah. I don't think it has to be in a document. Just proof that they said it. So again, that they are willing to take less or pay more, that they are willing to accept financing terms that are different than what's offered, whatever the motivating factors are. And last, this is kind of a catch-all, any other information specifically designated as confidential by the parties. So that's kind of a catch-all. So if they say, I don't want to disclose this or this or this, and it is not required by law or public information, then you must keep that confidential. If it is required by law to disclose, like material defects or something like that, or information that is made public, you can share that information.
Can you remind everybody what's the procedures on something like death in the home?
Psychologically affected properties. Who remembers what psychologically affected properties are? If it's haunted or someone died in it. Technically, you are supposed to send that request in writing. If it's not in writing, you don't have to respond to it, apparently, but it's kind of like, you're kind of responding by not responding, right? But if the request is sent in writing, you must respond to it
But you don't have to,
in writing.
but if they ask, right?
You don't have to disclose it, no. But if they ask about it,
Right to ask.
they have the right to ask, and you're required.
Disclose it or just
What
say.
if there's like a meth lab?
That's on the.
That is in the disclosure, so that's required by law. Yeah, yeah.
What if it happened?
Active meth or past meth?
What if it happened inside the house? Is that different than if it happened outside in the driveway, like a suicide or something of that nature?
What was the question?
It's on the property.
It just on the property.
If an event happened outside the house, not inside the house, if it's on the property, they're buying the property.
Right.
The house is just a fixture to the property. So I would say Cindy had one back when we were at Kivo when some guy signed early. Did you ever hear this story?
Yes.
A guy signed the day before closing, went home, had an RV. He was going to go live in his RV, and then the buyers were signing the next morning. Died in his RV overnight in the front yard, and they didn't learn it until buyers had signed. And it's like they own the house, and it wasn't in the property, and so they moved him, and the buyers got their house. So it was wild, right? I mean, I would say no. I mean, if there's a shooting or something down the street, you find that information. I don't think.
Someone called me after we went into conference. Did you know that?
Well, we're not allowed to share like criminal information or stuff like that. We can give, yeah.
I told them that.
I was showing a house when a shooting occurred at a adjacent apartment complex. We heard shots, and then we saw a 1992 Dodge Durango come around the corner, going about 150 miles an hour, and it was wild. We were just like, what the hell is going on? It was in Belle Isle. It was a really good neighborhood, but it was like, sorry, Ray, you had a question?
Definition of death in the property, is it criminal death or natural causes?
I think any death in the property.
Psychological factors.
Yeah.
You're not required to disclose in Oklahoma, but I will say, especially with how many people we have moving from out of state, other states do require that to be disclosed.
Older areas,
Older areas,
like-
northeast, stuff
yeah.
like that, where all the houses are like 18 million years
Yeah.
old and
Haunted house.
thinks they're haunted.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind with clients coming in from out of state. I had some military buyers ask about that, and I said we can ask, but
Yeah.
they don't technically.
There's one house in Military Park. I can't remember the neighborhood. Built in, I don't know, 1903 or something, and a famous sheriff lived there. And in the middle of the night, a bunch of criminals broke in and murdered him and his family. And it was a big news story, but apparently it's haunted, like actually haunted. And one of our agents sold it a couple years ago and disclosed it, and kind of leaned into it as a marketing tactic. But it was pretty wild. It was pretty wild, but yeah, some people. Anything other than if it's required by law or publicly available, if they ask you to keep it confidential, keep it confidential. Or get it in writing to disclose it. That's the way out. If you feel like you need to disclose this thing because it will help sell, or because everyone's going to ask about it, get permission in writing to disclose it.
So I sold a house to a buyer, and we discovered during inspections that there's a little mold in the property, so we had to remediate it. Then flash forward a couple years later, she wants to sell the property. She didn't disclose that there was mold. She said there's no mold present. And I'm like looking at it, and I'm like, I know that we.
The disclosure asks if there's ever been.
And there was, and she marked no.
Yeah, she needs to mark yes.
I felt like, what do I do now?
So you fill out this form. Good segue, Logan. No, perfect segue. I think. Let me make sure I'm done. Yeah, again, confidentiality protects leverage. So disclose facts, protect confidentiality, right? If it's legally required or publicly available, disclose it. Otherwise, you're giving leverage to the other party. That's the whole point of confidentiality. So item G is disclose information pertaining to the property required by Residential Property Condition Disclosure Acts. So the sellers have a duty by law to disclose property condition. If they do not, you have a duty to disclose it. So if you're a seller, and this is what, I saw someone post this on the Oklahoma City Realtors complaining page or whatever it's called. It was like, tell your agents to stop using disclaimers or exemption forms if they remodeled the home. And that's the number one violation of anything I see is an investor, someone had a rental, someone that flipped a house, and they just fill out a disclaimer instead of disclosures. So if you have a seller, an investor or whatever that insists on filling out a disclaimer rather than that, then I think you should fill this out to cover your butt.
I just did this. I have a listing that the house was donated to this nonprofit. They had it as a short-term rental, never had it inspected. All they had done was like replace the AC condenser fan and replace flooring and paint. And I sat across from him and said, even if you fill out these disclosures to your best of your knowledge, you're protected more under this than a disclaimer.
Correct.
He was adamant, I'm gonna fill out a disclaimer. I said, okay, well, you have told me things.
Yeah, that I know.
I'm going to
Yes.
put these on
Yep.
this document.
Exactly.
He's fine with it.
Yep.
Because he was like, well, that's better than people finding out later, so.
Yep.
And we've had no issues with that.
Yep.
And don't just put it in the realtor marks, actually put it on that form and have all parties sign.
Yes, put it in the realtor remarks, but it doesn't have sellers, right?
I added his signature to it, I just had him sign.
Okay, if he was willing to, but normally this exists because the seller's not willing to disclose something.
Right.
And so there is no seller signature here, but there is a buyer signature. So, and you would upload this with the disclosures with whatever, everything else. And you can tell the seller they're there or not, but you need to put that there. So that's a big piece of it is when they don't want to fill out the right document, or in this example, I know about mold. I told them, hey, we should put yes on this because it had mold and we remediated it. And she says, no, I'm not doing that. There's no mold. You need to fill this out. I would let her know, and maybe you get fired, but you don't go to jail and you don't lose your license. Someone had a question. Okay. So, item G is disclose information pertaining to the property condition disclosures. You must disclose known defects. So this is the name of the document, licensee disclosure to residential property. So this just says, I'm the licensee, I'm disclosing these things. Okay. Logan, you want to lead me into the next slide? You know what it is?
Yeah, no, I'm not right.
It's item H. What is it? Don't look. Item H is comply with all requirements of the Oklahoma Real Estate Code and all applicable statutes and rules. So this is, again, a catch-all. This is for the document to say, don't just treat this document like a checklist and it's like, okay, I did all these things. There's still a 1,000-page code and rule book that you need to apply or abide by as well. So again, a catch-all legal document. Don't just say, I did everything on this document. You still have to comply with everything in the code and rules. Makes sense. Go read the code and rules. Yeah.
I hate to segue backwards, but I'm just curious, when that's with videos, when you go to like this, we were talking about earlier about the disclosing and our duty to our sellers and buyers, when you fill out your information on showing time about how they, how they view the property, how do you make sure that you're not violating any of that?
How they view, what do you?
Like your feedback. Like
I give
something
my
you-
feedback.
So if they say something that you think needs to be disclosed, if they give you feedback?
If they say something that could be used as leverage later in.
Like giving your
Like
feedback
if they
is
give
maybe
feedback,
giving
they
away
come back
Like
information
the
to the
feedback.
buyer. 'Cause I feel like that's why half the pages don't.
Oh.
There's a huge debate on.
Well, just don't put confidential information in feedback. It's pretty, I think
Well,
that's,
they say like, oh, this house is overpriced or this house is underpriced and whatnot, and then you come back and put an offer. Well, your buyer said that it's at the right asking price, but now you guys came in 20
I don't think,
Interested, not interested.
yeah, that's all I do. Yeah, don't call me. Yeah. But no, I think feedback's super important when trying to get a house sold, but I don't think there's any, as long as you're not disclosing confidential information, which I don't think,
You can also change your feedback form to say whatever you want it to say, like you can.
as the listing agent.
Yeah.
Can
so
you
like
as a-
maybe
yeah.
if you're trying to be like, I'm trying to ask them questions, so you're not, I don't know if you're worried about them disclosing something.
Yeah.
You can change.
Yeah.
What's important information.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to create any liability there.
I typically give the feedback from my perspective as a fellow agent,
Not from the buyer.
feedback, and
Yeah.
not the buyer, unless there was something that like the buyer was like.
Specifically.
Make sure the sellers know X, Y, Z. But
Yeah, that's not a
typically
bad
I'll
way.
say as a buyer's agent, like, hey, the house is kind of dirty, I would recommend maybe sweeping up all the dead bugs.
Yeah.
or-
Because that's not a bad approach. Grayson's getting picked on. That's not a bad approach. At the end of the day, sellers want to know what can we do to get the home sold, and I think an agent can probably give that advice as well or better than a single buyer. Like this buyer doesn't like it because the coat closet. Well, that's not helpful. Like the agent can give that feedback. I I know there's a debate there about doing it or not doing it or creating liability. I think you're good giving feedback. As a listing agent, if you don't give it to me, I'm calling and getting it from you.
Yeah, if they give it to you verbally, you can't hold it against them.
Yeah.
So if they
And then
make
we talked about this a couple months ago in one of our last trainings, but if you don't give me feedback, I call you, get it, and then I input it into showing time so I can have it. Item I, we're getting close, guys. Stick with me. Item I, when working with one party or both parties to a transaction, the duties and responsibilities set forth in this section shall remain in place for both parties. So if you are representing both sides, you still have the same duties to both sides. Again, we are not an agency state. We do not have fiduciary responsibilities. Our duties are to the parties of the transaction as a whole. Certain ones are to ones we represent and certain ones are to all parties. But if you're representing someone, this is kind of a big knock is, if I'm a buyer, I don't want to go directly to the listing agent because the listing agent has a relationship with that seller and they don't know me from Adam. So who are they going to try to negotiate better for, right? Technically, we have a duty to both parties. You can't share information one way and not the other. You have duties to both parties. Who knows where we disclose that we're representing both parties?
the acknowledgement and confirmation.
Bam, that's right. Acknowledgement and confirmations, there's a checkbox to disclose to both the buyer and the seller, 2 boxes, that you're providing duties to both parties. So again, and again, remember, your duties are to parties of the contract, not non-parties. If someone is not on the contract, your duties do not extend to them. Again, siblings, mom, dad, attorney, whatever, it does not apply to them. Item J, disclose information pertaining to the compensation of fees assessed on each transaction to the represented party, which shall be communicated in writing before the effective date of the contract or lease. Again, get your buyer-broker agreement. I don't know how many times we saw buyer-broker agreements get signed the day before closing, or net to sellers, cost to buyers, all those things the day before closing. So super important to get all these things signed before the effective date of the contract. So net to sellers and cost to buyers. If the other side of the, this is wrong, ignore that last piece. I changed it after I got clarification from someone. So if you're not, unless you're providing services to the other side, you don't need to provide net to seller, cost to buyers. Item K, disclose the time frame from which the compensation agreement is valid, not to exceed 1 year. If no time is specified, then the compensation agreement shall default in 60 days. So I don't know if a lot of people know this. It is against Oklahoma law to have any compensation agreement, listing agreement, or buyer agreement for longer than 12 months. I've seen people put them open-ended. I've seen them say they renew every month until we agree that they stop. That is an invalid listing agreement. It is invalid, unenforceable if it doesn't have an end date, 12 months or less. So we have duties to disclose when the compensation agreement ends. When does the listing agreement end? When does the buyer agreement end? Cannot be longer than 1 year. 1 year is the max compensation agreement allowed. All right, 3 more. We're getting there. These are easy. So that's all section 1. Those are all your duties to the parties. Section 2 is brokerage services provided to both parties in the transaction. The Oklahoma broker relationship law, blah, 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 allows a real estate firm to provide brokerage services to both parties to the transaction. This could occur when a firm has contracted a seller-to-seller property and a prospective buyer contacts them, the same firm, to see the property. If the prospective buyer wants to make an offer on the property, the firm must now provide written notice to both buyer and seller that the firm is now providing brokerage services to both parties of the transaction. This is on the acknowledgement and confirmations. There's a little checkbox that says that. The more you can be transparent with this fact, the better. Full disclosure is always safest. I know a lot of people hate representing both sides. It puts agents in a really tough spot sometimes. The more you over-disclose and over-communicate, the safer you will become. But it does create a sticky situation for listing agents a lot of times. So this just states that if you represent both sides, you have to disclose in writing to both sides. Section 3, broker providing fewer services. If a broker intends to provide fewer brokerage services than those required to complete a transaction, the broker shall provide written disclosure to the party for whom the broker is providing services. The disclosure shall include these three things: a description of those steps in the transaction that you will not provide, and state that the broker assisting the other party is not responsible for those services either. So we do this like with Lennar Homes. We have a limited service agreement. So I have a whole waiver of duties document that they sign with me when we do all their business. I'm not going to present anything in writing. I'm not going to keep you informed on the transaction. All those things that I'm waiving that they don't want me to do anyway, we agree to. So I state exactly what steps I'm waiving, and I have to state that the other party is not responsible for those duties either. I'm sorry, the other broker in the transaction. So that Lennar can't go back to the other realtor and say, why didn't you do these things? They are waiving all duties from both representatives. Does that make sense? So you can very much do this. Everyone's seen enter-only listings or limited service listings, whatever they might be. There's a bunch of different things, but you have to disclose in writing what you're not going to do and the fact that the other party's not responsible for it either. Section 4, confirmation of disclosures and duties of responsibilities. The duties and responsibilities disclosed by the broker shall, 1, be confirmed in writing, that's what's happening here, by each party in separate provisions incorporated and attached to the contract. So 1, it's in writing, it's the document we're talking about. This is part of your duties, is happening in the document that it's talking about. And the second piece is attached to the contract. This is why it's page 8 of the contract, page 5 of the listing agreement, page 4 of the buyer-broker agreement. It has to be attached to any contract. And a contract is not just a purchase contract. A contract is any document between you and a consumer, right? The listing agreement is a contract. The buyer-broker agreement is a contract. So this document has to be attached to any contract that you and a consumer sign. Make sense? Not just an actual contract, an actual purchase contract. Last slide, summary. So again, in Oklahoma, we have duties to parties of the contract. We're not agency. We don't have duties to one side. We don't have fiduciary. We don't have duties to the transaction. We have duty, because duties to the transaction expire when the transaction is over. We have duties to the parties that can live, that can survive the actual contract. So duties to all parties, not people, not non-parties, right? Just to parties. Honesty and reasonable skill and care, item A. Reduce to writing and timely present offers, item B. Disclose of material facts, item G. Compliance with the law, OREC, state code and rules, item H. Accounting for monies, item E. Protecting their confidential information is a duty to everyone, item F. And then duties to the person that we are providing brokerage services is to keep them informed of the transaction, item D. Explaining costs and compensation, item C and J. And advising within the scope of your relationship, which is all, right? Do less, be a resource, not the expert, and make sure you're doing all of these things. Grayson, does this help you with your transaction?
Yes.
All right. Good. That is it. That is all. Make sure you signed in. If you did not sign in, Christina's waving it in the air over there. Go grab it from Christina. Get your 1 hour CE. I made you sit through it, so you might as well get credit for it. Any questions before we end? Yeah, all right, let's go.
Okay, just to confirm, so we get this signed, is it with the BBA and the contract?
Yes, you get it, yeah, yep. You should, I think, Christina, do you need this signed at the time of BBA or listing agreement and contract? Probably just once.
You told me both. So,
I think it's both, but
well, because ours is, well, if you do the proper quick version, it's attached to both.
to both of them. So it gets signed with both anyway. So I'm gonna say both. It's another document in the list of documents that gets signed. Yeah, because I think, because you're checking when you're disclosing it each time. So again,
So usually, we get the BBA signed before we show any houses.
right.
We get it signed then, that's how I'm used to it.
So
I wanted to make sure if I needed.
yeah, so in our dot loop, do you have a
My old, yeah, brokerage we
once? I think you could do once. If you use our dot loop in our templates, it will get signed twice by default. I would. It's another document. You can just say you already signed this document, but we have to do it. It's just like a net to seller. You have to do a net to seller when you get the BBA. You have to do it at the contract. You have to do it every time there's a counter offer. Now people don't do that all the time, but you have to do it with the listing and when a contract comes in. So I think anytime you're providing services or additional services, we should get it signed. But it happens naturally through dot loop. So I would say at both times. Hopefully I didn't confuse everyone. All right. Thank you guys. Woo. Yes, ma'am.
So I just went through that, what you're saying. I had a seller contact me, a for sale by owner.